Students, a very warm welcome. We've taken the study of the last lesson. It's chapter 1 of Flamingo. It is written by Alphonse Daudet. Some of the words, their meanings, I am explaining them here. Like dread means fear and scold means rebuke. That I was in a great dread of a scold. From whom? From his teacher M. Hamlet. Secondly, tempting means enticing. Resist means overcome, control. Tempting. There were great temptations for him to run away and spend his days out of doors because he had not learned his lesson. The participants. So the tempting, it was all much more tempting, and he couldn't resist it. That could not resist it, overcome it. Out of breath means gasping. When he hurried off to school, he went very fast. He was out of breath. He was gasping. Out of breath means gasping. Commotion, sudden short period of noise. Now, since he was late and he thought that nobody should see him while he was entering into his class, so he said that he would take advantage of the commotion in the class, certain short period of noise, but that was not there that day. It was all quiet as Sunday morning. Solemn means serious. He saw that the atmosphere was grave and solemn, serious. Thunderclap means loud sound of thunder. When friends came to know that the German had imposed their language upon them, he said that it was like a thunderclap for him. Loud sound of thunder. Cranky means strange. From that moment onwards, his French books began to look him like friends. He began to look upon his teacher with great respect. His ruler didn't make him dreaded. And even how cranky his teacher was, how straight he was, this disappeared. All these feelings disappeared. Plenty means enough. Plenty has been used when M. Hamel says that you people have been putting off learning till next day, saying that there was plenty of time, and that way you never learned it. Plenty means enough. Putting off means delay. It is said, don't put off till tomorrow what you can do today. Put off, delay. Pretend, show off. Pretend, show off. He chided the French people that they didn't know their language and still they pretended to be Frenchmen. Pretended means show off, falsely. Reproach, rebuke. Thus he reproached them. He said, we have all a great deal to reproach ourselves with. Not only the students who are putting off learning, it's the parents as well who don't pay much attention. They don't heed. And we are not anxious enough to have them learn. So here, reproach means rebuke. He reproached them. Anxious, worried, careful. He said that parents were not anxious enough to have their children learn. Guard, we say. How? He said that the French language was the most beautiful, the clearest, the most logical, and we must guard it among us. Well, guard means the same. Hold fast means hold firmly. He said that when a people are enslaved, if they hold fast to the language, it is as if they hold a key to the prison. Hold fast means hold firmly. Amazed. Amazed means highly surprised. Franz was amazed when he saw that all the students, even the villagers, were very serious and become very serious towards the learning the language. Patience, the ability to wait. Gazing, looking intently. Gazing. Now, M. Hamel was sitting motionless. Friends saw him gazing at one thing and then at another, as if he was fixing all these things in his mind. Choked. Choked means blocked the throat. When it struck 12, he stood up in his chair, and friends say that he had never seen him look so tall. The teacher, Abraham Hebel, began to address his students, but became speechless. Choked, blocked the throat. He felt as if somebody had put a thumb in his neck. Gesture means sign, movement. He could not say anything and took a chalk and wrote on the board, Veuve France. Leaned against the wall and made a gesture with his hands. Gesture means sign with his hands. School is closed. You may go. Okay. Now we come to the summary of the lesson. That's a brief summary. Please. Welcome, students. Today we will take up the study of the last lesson from chapter 1 of Flamingo. It's written by Alphonse Daudet. Alphonse Daudet was a French novelist, and this story is set in 1870-71, in the days of this period when there was Franco-Prussian War. And the French had been defeated. Russia had occupied two districts of France, Alsace and Lorraine. Students, for the sake of study, we can divide it into two parts. Before friends went to school, and the other when the developments after he attended the school. Now, before he went to school, that day, before friends went to school, see children, that day he was late for school, first thing, and then he was in great dread of a scolding. Why? He had not learnt his lesson, learnt participles as had been instructed by his teacher M. Hamel. This was his teacher. That day he wanted to run away and spend his days out of doors. He wanted to see the birds chirping. He wanted the Prussian army. He wanted to see Prussian army drilling. But though all of this was much more tempting than the rule of grammar participles, he had the strength to resist it. He hurried off to school and en route saw that there was a great crowd before a bulletin board. But he went past by it, didn't pay any heed to what had been written on the blackboard, on that bulletin board. He ran as fast as he could and was out of breath when he reached the school. He was surprised that the school was as quiet as Sunday morning. And though he had counted on the commotion that he will go to his desk without being seen, but he was surprised to find that there was pin-drop silence everywhere. Even M. Hamel did not scold him for coming late. He immediately went to his desk, sat there, and when he was settled, he saw that M. Hamel was putting on a dress which he usually worn on annual days. Then he was very much surprised that the old villagers were sitting at the back in the back benches. He was very much surprised. M. Hamel, in his grave and gentle voice tone, told the students that it was the last lesson that he would be teaching them. Why? Because an order had come from Berlin that day that from next day onwards, German language would be taught to them instead of French. Now this was a thunderclap for little friends. He immediately saw his world changed. He began to love his books, grammar, and all those things. Even the teacher whom he dreaded too much, and how cranky he was, he said. While he was thinking all those things, his name was called out and he was told to recite the participants. Friends got all things mixed up and couldn't utter his word. M. Hamel said that he won't scold him because the students were to blame for putting off learning till the next day. He said that not only students, all of them were a great deal to reproach themselves with. Why? He said that the parents were not anxious enough to have their children learn. The teacher himself sent them out for watering the plants, would take holidays whenever he wanted, go fishing. And then he said that from one thing to another, he came to talk about French. He said that he glorified it, saying that it was the most beautiful French language, the most beautiful, the most logical, and told them to guard it among them. Why? Because when a people are enslaved, he said, when a people are enslaved, they must hold fast to their language because it is a key to their prison. It is as if it's a key to their prison. He taught them the lesson that day, and friends said that he understood it. And it all seemed very easy. Next day, he would, whatever he told them, the students followed it. They set to work, whatever was told, and he saw during that period, friends saw that M. Hamel sat motionless in his chair. He would gaze at one thing and then at another, as if he was fixing up all these things in his mind. For 40 years he had taught in that very room. When it struck 12, M. Hamel stood up in his chair, and friends says that he had never seen him so tall earlier. He said that, my children, here, he couldn't utter, he became speechless. He couldn't utter much. Choked. He was choked. And took a chalk and wrote it on the board, Oeil France. Leaned against the wall and with a gesture of his hand as if he was saying that school is closed, you may go. Now students, this is a story. You will find that in the life of friends, this day was full of regret and sadness. Earlier, he was sad that he had not learnt his lesson. Then he felt sad that from that day onwards, he will not be able to be taught by as great a teacher as M. Hamel. Secondly, the story tells us about linguistic chauvinism. Linguistic chauvinism. The conqueror here, the Prussian army was so arrogant that after occupying the territory, after ruling over the territory, they wanted to rule over the minds of those people who were residing there, and thereby impose themselves upon the French people. M. Hammel's advice here is very relevant. What was his advice? When a people are enslaved, if they hold fast to their language, it is as if they have a key to the prison. This is a very important line. So students, we have summarized the lesson. You can go through and enjoy it. Now we come to the terms which have been used in this lesson. Students, a question arises: is language a part of the culture? Taking an example from the last lesson written by Alphonse Daudet, we can say that language is an essential part of a culture. M. Hamel scolds the French for putting off learning their language. He said that they have a great deal to reproach themselves with. Nobody was serious. He himself sent the students to water the plants. The parents of the students were not serious. They were not anxious enough to have them learn. He chides all the French people for pretending to be Frenchmen when they can't read and write it. He says that even though enslaved, he gives a clue that how a language is a part of the culture. He says that even though enslaved, they had a key to free themselves if they held fast to their language, French. We come to the next question. What is linguistic chauvinism? Then comes the question, what is linguistic chauvinism? By linguistic chauvinism, we mean that it is the imposition of one's language upon the others by force. It grows out of an excessive pride in one's own language. The conqueror of a territory wants to rule over the minds and hearts of those enslaved. The last lesson, written by Alphonse Daudet, is an active example. After occupying the French territories, Prussians became so arrogant that they barred the learning of French and imposed German instead. So students, as far as the questions from the lesson itself, will become very easy after you go through the summary. These are some of the questions which can be taken up, like was it a day full of sadness and regret for friends? Like that, we can find out the answers to these questions. Thank you for listening patiently.